right, hello. So we're going to see if this works. I'm not sure. It's Sunday evening here at my house, and I wanted to try and get a recording to you that would do everything that we would normally do in class. I have to be at a testing site tomorrow. We're doing third grade testing. So I will not be in class, but we'll see how this goes, and hopefully this recording will work out for you. All right, so we are going over lesson 5.03, filling in the map. You do need to make sure that you have your reading pages 210 to 229 complete while you're doing this lesson, or when you finish this lesson, I guess I should say. So please make sure that you have that done. Not everything that we cover in class covers everything in the book. So as long as you're getting the book done, you will be good to go. Here is our syllabus. And as you can see, today is Monday the 19th. Well, I should say tomorrow is going to be Monday the 19th. When you're watching this, will be Monday the 19th. And we are on that lesson, and it goes along with your student guide pages 133 to 139. Okay. So what we're going to do first is we are going to watch the flip video lesson. So give me a second. I'm going to pull that up on the screen, and I will be right back. Okay, here we go. Let's see if this will work. Might take a second to pull up on the screen. 5.03, filling in the map. This goes along with your Human Odyssey reading pages 210 to 221 and your student guide pages 133 to 135. Please make sure you have your student guide book opened and you can start filling in the answers as we go through the lesson. Lesson introduction. Just 30 years after Columbus first tried to reach Asia by sailing west, a Spanish expedition circumnavigated the globe. By then, Europeans knew there were huge land masses between Western Europe and Eastern Asia. As explorers sailed west into uncharted sea, they encountered parts of those continents and claimed them for their monarchs. But their real goal was still to reach the riches of the Indies. Other expeditions continued to risk everything by going through treacherous waters around the southern tip of Africa. The wealth and fame these explorers imagined would make all the hardship and danger worthwhile. But no one could have imagined what really occurred as a result of these explorations. The lesson objectives. Recognize that 15th century standards for the behavior of nations differed from modern standards. Describe the events leading to Portugal's claim to Brazil and the consequences of that claim. Identify Ferdinand Magellan. Identify Pedro Cabral. Identify the line of demarcation and explain its purpose. Identify Vasco da Gama. And locate on a map the route Magellan took, the major land areas and bodies of water on the route, and the distance the expedition traveled. Summarize the significant events of Magellan's voyage. So this is on page 133 of your student guide. There was an activity where you were to write a story or a few paragraphs using the words that you had to choose. So the next, the next two slides are in reference to that. Actually, I think the next three slides. Queen Isabella of Spain heard of King Manuel's plans to send ships west to claim land for Portugal. They asked him to wait until it was decided to whom the seas and conquests belonged. In 1493, Pope Alexander VI established the line of demarcation, which divided the world in two. Portugal could claim lands east of the line of demarcation, and Spain could claim lands west of the line. The Treaty of Tordesillas moved the line of demarcation farther west and gave Portugal clear rights to an eastward sea route to the Indies. Again, this goes along with page 133. This is additional vocabulary. You can make this another paragraph if you'd like. In 1497, King Manuel sent Vasco da Gama on an expedition to find an eastward sea route all the way to the Indies. He was successful. In 1498, he reached Calcutta, India. Sea voyages were dangerous. During the 15th and 16th century, sailors often got scurvy, which is a disease caused by a severe lack of vitamin C, and they died. In 1500, King Manuel appointed Pedro Cabral to lead a fleet of 13 ships to India. To take advantage of the trade winds, Cabral at first sailed west. He went farther than he had intended and discovered and claimed for Portugal land that is today part of Brazil. Cabral was able to claim Brazil for Portugal because it was located east of the line of demarcation. Because Portugal colonized it, most Brazilians today speak Portuguese. So those are the three slides that go with page 133. Now we're on to the next question. Portugal and Spain were rivals in the exploration of the seas. Both nations were sending out voyages of exploration. The main reasons Portugal and Spain sent out voyages of exploration were, number one, they hoped to establish sea routes to the Indies so they could bring spices, gems, and other goods back to Europe to trade. They also both wanted to claim distant lands to enlarge their empires. Europeans of the 15th century had no problem dividing the globe and claiming lands around the world as their own. What has changed since that time? So the Spanish and Portuguese saw the world differently than we do today. In the 15th century, the idea of rights did not exist. There was no concept of equal rights for all individuals or the rights of nations to rule themselves. What prevents nations today from doing what Spain and Portugal did then? It was not until the early 20th century that the idea of self-determination began to take hold. People decided they should be able to choose their own governments. Empires began to crumble as countries declared their independence after World War I and World War II. Many nations in Africa gained independence in the 1960s. Today, the world does not accept the idea that a country can claim territory outside its borders. Exploration notes of Ferdinand Magellan and his search for a sea route through the Americas to the Indies. So landfall in Brazil. Magellan, sails west from Spain, encounters storms and calms in the Atlantic. The 5 ships make landfall on the east coast of South America. They trade with the natives and restock their food and water supplies. Wintering over in Patagonia. The expedition leaves Brazil and heads south along the coast. They stop and anchor in a bay for the winter. They meet the natives of Patagonia. One ship is lost to a storm. The mutiny. Possibly because they resent Magellan's Portuguese nationality, a group of Spanish officers mutinies and takes control of 3 of the ships. Magellan eventually regains control of the fleet and severely punishes the mutineers. Discovering the Strait. When spring arrives, the fleet heads south again. They enter a large bay and Magellan sends 2 ships to explore it. 2 days later, after a gale, Magellan gives them up for lost and prepares to sail. The 2 ships finally return and report finding a narrow channel opening into a second bay, with another channel beyond that. The entire fleet enters the winding strait and sails west. Mutineers on one ship sneak away and head back to Spain. A month after entering the strait, the 3 remaining ships sail out into the Pacific, and then crossing the Pacific. For more than 3 months, the 3 ships sailed northwest across the Pacific. The food begins to rot, so the crew is forced to eat rats, leather, and sawdust. Scurvy kills many of the sailors. The fleet makes landfall on the islands of Guam and Rota, where they find food and water. The fleet continues, and after crossing 13,000 miles of the Pacific, they reach the Philippines. Disaster in the Philippines. Magellan claims the islands of the Philippines for Spain and trades with the inhabitants. He baptizes a king, queen, and hundreds of other natives. One island chief refuses to welcome him, so Magellan attacks the island. The islanders attack Magellan and a small group of soldiers as they land on the beach. Some of his crew escape, but the islanders kill Magellan. The voyage home. After Magellan's death, his crew burns one ship and continues sailing west. Through the islands of Southeast Asia, they reach the Spice Islands and load a cargo of cloves. One ship sails east to try to reach Mexico. The other ship, the Victoria, sails west across the Indian Ocean heading for home. 3 years after leaving Spain, the Victoria, with only a crew of 18, returns home. And this is for the answers for the Focus on Geography, pages 137 to 139. They are in the blue links found in your OMS. So this section is optional, but go to your OMS, which is your K-12 lesson, your online school, and you can look for the blue link and you can find the answers for Focus on Geography. Again, this is optional. You do not need to fill this in. Okay? All right, and we come to the end of our flip video lesson. Thank you for joining me. Every experience is a form of exploration. Okay, let's see if this worked. Hopefully when I do the recording, it will It will show as correct. All right, so you should have been able to take some notes on your the flip video lesson that was just shown on your blue student guide. Just a couple quick comments. This right here, the 15th century standards for behavior of nations differed from modern standards. Obviously, we're dealing a lot with this in current day history. We talk about this often. The way to make history interesting is trying to relate it to your normal, everyday, regular life. Definitely the standards during the 15th century were much different than the standards that we have now. So it's important to remember that as we're studying going through history. So again, we're going to talk about Vasco da Gama, Pedro Cabral, Ferdinand Magellan, this line of demarcation and how, they moved it depending on where they wanted to claim. Talk about the events leading to Portugal's claim to Brazil, and then the significance of Magellan's voyage. So race to explore Portugal and Spain. Portugal and Spain were early rivals in the exploration race. After Columbus landed in the Bahamas, the rivalry increased, meaning they, started fighting even more. And with both nations desiring to claim new lands, the leaders of both Catholic nations looked to the current Pope, which was Alexander VI, to determine how the new lands would be divided, how they could be, separated. So Pope Alexander VI decided to split the world in half, not literally, but, by a line. The Pope drew a line on a map, declaring the land west of the line available to Spain, while the land east could be Portugal's. This line was known as the line of demarcation, and then about a year later, leaders of Portugal and Spain met and updated the agreement, moving the line further west. So this agreement was the Treaty of Tordesillas, and this eventually allowed Portugal to claim Brazil, which was Brazil of South America. And I believe it was in the flip video lesson, I think, or I'm not sure if we're coming up to it in these slides. I can't remember. But obviously, we don't just go in and take land like that now. We don't go in and say, oh, we don't like this line, so we're going to move it. Sorry, we don't like this the border of Ohio, so we're going to move it over a little bit. Ohio's going to claim into Pennsylvania. We don't do that anymore, but that definitely was done back in the 15th, 16th centuries. So since Bartolomeu Diaz had sailed around the Cape of Good Hope, Portugal could claim the lands east of the line, which is here. And then since Columbus had reached islands by sailing west, Spain could claim everything west of the line. So basically everything over here was Spain, everything over here was Portugal. Okay? So then we've got Vasco da Gama was a Portugal explorer. King Manuel of Portugal appointed Vasco da Gama, who was a young nobleman, to follow in the footsteps of Bartolomeu Diaz. I always want to say Bartholomew. I said that in class. I feel like there needs to be an H there. His mission was to journey south around Africa and establish a trade route with Asia, and he prepared 3 ships for the voyage, bringing along translators and large stones used to claim for Portugal. So, again, very different than how things are done today. While east of Africa, da Gama did not get too close to land. After rounding the continent, he landed frequently while claiming the new lands for Portugal. He eventually reached India, but the trade didn't go so well. On the return trip, about half of his crew died, and they had to abandon one of the 3 ships. Even with the deaths and poor trading, da Gama's voyage was celebrated by the Portuguese. He did succeed in finding an eastward, sea route that was a trade route along the sea, and you can see here in this map how it goes around and comes up here to Lisbon. Okay. Pedro Cabral was a Portuguese explorer. Cabral was a Portuguese explorer sent out a follow-up mission after da Gama's success. He began following the same route, but took a trade wind far to west and eventually landed in South America. And then Cabral would claim the region of modern-day Brazil for Portugal. After that, he sailed back east and followed da Gama's route more closely. So, again, the maps that we know today didn't exist. So they were making maps, they were exploring as they were going, much different than how we do things today. So Cabral's claim was possible thanks to the Treaty of Tordesillas, which moved the line of demarcation further west. So this is also why the primary language of Brazil is Portugal, which Spanish is common throughout the rest of South America. So any of you that have traveled or have been in that area, maybe, which would be super neat, you might have noticed the difference in language, okay? If I ever go to Brazil, South America, I would love to go to the rainforest. Totally off topic, but would be very neat. So Ferdinand Magellan was a Spanish explorer, And Magellan was from Portugal, but he didn't get along with the king very well, and he decided to sail for Spain. He believed he could find a route through South America to Asia. He was looking for a shortcut. The journey wouldn't go as planned, but Magellan's crew would become the first people to circumnavigate the globe. So here we have Magellan's voyage, and if you look up here, he left in September 1519, 5 ships, all good. Then he gets to March 1520. He executed a captain for mutiny. Mutiny means they decided they wanted to overthrow the captain or they wanted to overthrow Magellan and say, hey, listen, we don't want you here anymore. We're gonna take over. And Magellan didn't take to that too kindly. Then October 1520, the strait was found. Only 3 ships remain. I don't know if we're going to relate to current day history, how I always tell you to do that. It's interesting that all was good in September of 1519. And in March of 1520, that's when it kind of turned south. Kind of how it is with this pandemic, right? In September of 2019, we thought everything was great and good. And then we get to March of 2020 and we realize there's some not so great things ahead in store for us. So anyways, October 1520, the strait was found. Only 3 ships remained. Then in March of 1521, they landed on Guam. Pacific was way bigger than they had planned. It took much longer. 1521, Magellan died in battle. That's what you learned on the flip video lesson as well. They got off, and he got off with some of his crewmen, and some did escape. So then one ship, this says 22 crew made it back. Obviously, there are varying things. Some say 22, some say 18-ish. So as history moves through time, obviously some things are slightly changed or not, hard to document exactly. So anyways, there were around 20 people who made it back to Spain. So the voyage overall was terrible for Magellan's crew. Most of the crew died from malnutrition and or starvation throughout the trip. Technically, though, the voyage succeeded at its goal. The route around South America was found along with the westward route to Asia. And I'm going to see here, I don't know if I can. Hopefully this isn't going to mess up the recording, but let's see. I did pull up. Yeah, let's see here. It might not let me. Let me see. Yeah, here. These are pictures of scurvy, which is really kind of gross. But scurvy is basically when you don't get enough vitamin C and basically your gums start to rot. And you can see these are pictures of scurvy. You lose your teeth, your gums start to rot, et cetera, et cetera. So scurvy was not pleasant, not anything, that was good by any means. So, okay. All right, give me a second here. It's going to take me a second to get back to where we need to be because I did that. Hang on. Sorry, you might be getting dizzy going through all these. Give me a second so we can get back to where we were. But I did want to show you scurvy was not pleasant. All right. So then this is the route. This is Da Gama's route is red. Cabral's route is purple. And then Magellan's route is yellow. So you can see those different routes as they pertain to what they were exploring. Okay. And then I believe, yep, that's all that I have for you today. So I do need to make sure that you do read your pages 210 to 221 in your Human Odyssey book. You need to complete your student guide pages that go along with your flip video lesson. And that's all that I have for you today, boys and girls. I'm sorry I'm not in class. I look forward to seeing you. I won't be here in class tomorrow either. I do have to continue on with the testing at my testing site, but I will have another video for you. I'll try and do maybe a Kahoot format or something fun to review for this assessment. Okay? Thanks for joining me. Make sure you have your work completed and have a great day. Bye, guys.